As an admin or team leader, you understand the importance of being effective and efficient with your time. And that's one of the reasons you're probably using the PhoneBurner power dialer, right? You want to make sure that your team is getting more done in less time. And this video is part of the LeadStream training series. So if you haven't been watching all of the LeadStream specific videos, I'd highly recommend that you go back and watch the rest of them because they all kind of build on top of each other. But this specific video, we're going to start to dive into the reporting features of LeadStream. Now you may already know about reports that are just part of PhoneBurner, just the general reports, as you can see here on the screen. But LeadStream reports can be accessed from the Team Admin Report section. You'll see this LeadStream Reports link. When you go in there, you're going to see all of the different report types that are available to you as an admin when you're taking advantage of the LeadStream feature of PhoneBurner. And this specific training, we're going to be diving deep into the Distributed Leads Report. The Distributed Leads Report helps you understand exactly what leads, what contacts have been distributed to your team. Now, of course, depending on the type of lead stream, what a distributed lead means is different. Like for example, if you're using the blind poll lead stream, every time your team makes a call to a contact in that lead stream, it's distributed. Or if you're using a RoundRobin lead stream, leads are distributed as soon as they're available and you have team members in that lead stream that can receive those leads. And for a preview poll or a lead blitz lead stream, a lead is distributed to your team members when they claim the lead. They're essentially taking that lead out of the pool, and that's when it's distributed. So regardless of the type of lead stream you're using, you're going to want to see how many leads are distributed to each of your team members and what's going on with those leads. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So you choose the Distributed Leads Report. Below that, you're going to choose the date range that you want to filter them by. Let's say, for example, we want to set a custom date range. Maybe we want to see the leads that were distributed, between the 26th and the 30th. Whatever that might be, right? And then we click Apply. And then we can filter by team member. I'm not going to adjust this right now, but by default it's set to the entire team. But you can also filter it down to specific team members. Filter by lead streams. So by default it's going to display all lead streams, all distributed data, but you can look at it based off of each specific lead stream. Once you've made those selections, go ahead and click the Run Report button. And you'll see all of the leads or all of the contacts that were distributed during that date range. Here you can see Heather received 499 leads, whereas Jeff got 250 and Cassie got 249. From here, you can actually drill down in. Let's say we want to see all of the 499 leads that were distributed to Heather. If I click on that 499, I can see all of the leads that were distributed and the lead stream that they were distributed through. In this particular case, they were distributed through my RoundRobin lead stream. And I can scroll down through all of these. Over on the far right, we can click on the View Timeline option. If we click on View Timeline, we'll see when the contact was created in the PhoneBurner system and what it's done as far as lead streams are concerned here in the timeline. So for example, this contact was created on June 23rd. It was distributed on June 23rd, recycled on June 30th, and then redistributed on June 30th. All as part of the RoundRobin lead stream. Now let's go ahead and close that out. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see that when we clicked into that, the filter by team member changed from entire team to Heather, because now we're looking at just the records that were distributed to Heather. Now let's try changing the date range. Let's say the past 30 days. Switch this to Jeff, and let's change the filter by lead stream to hot and fresh leads. once I make that selection, you'll see the report updates. And now I can see all of the contacts that were distributed to Jeff through this specific lead stream during that date range. Because this specific lead stream is a blind poll lead stream, every one of these contacts was actually called to be able to be distributed. And you'll notice the status column here. The status column tells you the current status of the contact. So anyone without a status means that they were not dispositioned. They've not been dispositioned since they were distributed. And so that's important for you to look at so that you can see, okay, is my team working the leads that they've received? Whether that's a round robin, a blind poll. Now, most of the time, a blind poll lead stream, everything's going to be dispositioned because they have to call it in order to claim it and all of that good stuff, right? But doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be dispositioned. But there's a few things that I want to have you take a look at here. So for example, let's take a look at Colossus. He was set as a follow-up. If I click on View Timeline, what you'll notice is the create date and the distributed date, just like we saw before on the other view timeline that we looked at. But what you'll notice on this one is we have lead successfully worked. And what that means is this contact was dispositioned in a way that moved the contact out of the lead stream. Now, we're not saying that it was a successful call. Now, in the case of a follow-up, that is a successful call. But let's take, for example, someone who's not interested. That one's still going to show as successfully worked, even though we may not consider that a success, right? There's a difference on the system side of whether or not it successfully worked versus whether or not you and I believe it was successfully worked. But what you'll also notice in this one is not only was this contact created and distributed through the blind poll lead stream and then successfully worked, but this contact was also distributed through the not interested round robin lead stream. So here you can see I'm getting a full picture of everything that's happened or happening to a lead that was distributed through this specific lead stream. And this can get really interesting depending on the types of lead streams you're using and how they cycle in and out of each other. So let's go ahead and close this window. The next thing I want to talk to you about is over on the left-hand side, you'll see two buttons, Download Report as CSV and Download Detailed Breakdown as CSV. Let's take a look at the Download Report as CSV. So I'm going to click on that. That's going to give me an exported CSV file. Here you can see it just gives me essentially a summary of what I'm looking at this screen. If I was up a level, I would see that same summary for each user, how many leads they had distributed to them during that time frame in the same type of a summary. Now the next export, this one gets really interesting. Let's go ahead and download Detailed Breakdown. Let's open this up. And here is that CSV file. So over here on the left-hand side, we see the team member and the contact, right? So that's pretty straightforward and useful, but it really gets interesting as we move over here to the right. So let's take, for example, column O, date added. So that's the date the contacts were added to the PhoneBurner system. Then we've got column P, the date they were added to the lead stream. Now in this case, the date they were added to the lead stream is the date that they were called from the lead stream, right? Because that's technically when they began as part of this lead stream. Putting somebody in the distribution folder of a blind poll lead stream doesn't necessarily mean they're part of the lead stream, right? Wink, wink. They haven't been distributed yet. So the date added to lead stream is when they got distributed. And then we've got the folder. Okay, that's straightforward. That can come in handy if a contact was a follow-up, right? Well, now we know what that outcome was. But let's go over a little bit further. And the next one is the first call date. This one, if you start to compare first call date and date added, that becomes really interesting, right? You can see how fast your team is communicating with those contacts as they come into your system. You can also get this first call date and date added when you do a full contact export as well. If we go ahead and go to column S, we'll see last call date. This can come in handy, right? If we know that a contact was in the follow-up folder and the first call date was this date and the last call date was the same date, hey, first call, done, closed it, good, great, right? But if the last call date doesn't match, we can see how much time it took from the first call to the last call for them to end up with a follow-up. And then skipping over to column V, you can see total calls. How many times did we try to reach this person before we were able to, in this case, connect with them? And let's look at the last call date compared to the folder, right? So we can start to compare things with this information. And then columns T and U, these are all related to the person who received the contact. So this can come in really handy if you're distributing data out via RoundRobin, and then after a while, that contact might get redistributed to another team member. And so we might want to see the first call to this contact when this team member had access or had control of that contact, and the last call to that contact when that team member had control of that contact. So really interesting information that you can pull from that. And then of course you've got the call results, you've got your notes, and then over to the far right, I'm not going to dig into the details here, but you can see how many of any particular activity was done to that specific contact. Like how many emails were sent to them, how many dial sessions were they a part of, all that kind of stuff. So different activities that can be done to or that contact can do, like opening emails and things like that. So anyway, lots of great information that you can get when you export the detailed report. So I'm going to go ahead and move this off the screen. But as you can see, running distributed lead reports can really get you a lot of insights to how your data is being, one, distributed to your team. And of course, depending on the type of lead streams, that may be even or that may be uneven, right? If it's a blind pull lead stream, you might have one person that's really just knocking it out of the park and making a lot of phone calls. So their numbers may not be an exact match. And then of course you can drill down in and start to see what's going on with each of those contacts. So anyway, that is a quick little overview of the distributed leads report. I hope this helps you better understand what's available here for distributed leads and how you can start to gain insights about each and every lead that's distributed to your team. So anyway, thanks for taking a moment to watch this video. I hope this helps you and your organization get more done in less time using the power of PhoneBurner. Thanks again, and happy dialing.